Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that the richest continent on Earth, Africa, has finally taken control of its $5 trillion treasure chest. Gold, oil, lithium, cobalt, uranium, the lifeblood of modern economies. For decades, these resources were the foundation of Western wealth. France relied on African uranium to keep its lights on. The United States depended on African cobalt for its fighter jets, its smartphones, its electric cars. Western mining giants like Barrick Gold, AngloGold Ashanti, Glencore, and Rio Tinto built billion-dollar empires by extracting Africa's minerals for cheap. But today, Africa is rewriting the rules. Countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are kicking out French control. Zimbabwe is banning the export of raw lithium. Ghana is demanding gold-for-oil swaps. And across the continent, new BRICS-backed deals are locking Washington and Brussels out of the game. This isn't just economics. This is the collapse of the West's control and the rise of a new global order. Make no mistake, Africa's $5 trillion resource revolution is not only shaking Wall Street and Paris. It is bankrupting the West, and the U.S. dollar is now standing on the brink. Africa is the wealthiest continent in terms of natural resources, yet it has been painted as poor for decades. Why? Because its wealth was extracted and shipped out. Let's look at the numbers. Gold. Africa controls nearly 40% of the world's gold reserves. Ghana recently overtook South Africa as the continent's top gold producer, exporting over 130 metric tons in 2022 alone. Oil and gas. Africa holds 7 to 8% of the world's proven oil reserves. Nigeria produces nearly 1.5 million barrels per day, while Angola, Algeria, and Libya remain giants in OPEC. New offshore oil fields in Namibia are being called the next Saudi Arabia. Cobalt and lithium. The DRC supplies 70% of the world's cobalt, essential for electric vehicles and smartphones. Zimbabwe and Mali are becoming lithium powerhouses, with Zimbabwe alone estimated to hold 13 million tons. Uranium. Niger has the highest-grade uranium reserves in the world, historically supplying over 30% of France's nuclear fuel. Platinum and rare earths. South Africa holds over 90% of the world's platinum reserves, a critical resource for green energy and hydrogen fuel cells. Combined, Africa's resources are worth over $5 trillion. Yet for decades, Africa was kept poor while the West grew rich. The West's dominance rested on two pillars: direct resource extraction by Western corporations. Barrick Gold took billions in profits from mines in Tanzania and Mali. Glencore controlled cobalt in the DRC, supplying Tesla and Apple. Total Energies dominated oil production in Angola and Nigeria. Areva, now Orano, the French state-backed company, extracted uranium from Niger while local communities stayed in poverty. Financial control through the IMF and World Bank. African nations were forced to take loans in US dollars. In return, they had to privatize industries, cut subsidies, and keep exporting raw materials instead of building their own industries. Example: Ghana exported cocoa beans but had to import chocolate. Nigeria exported crude oil but imported refined gasoline. This system kept Africa dependent, while the West lived on cheap African wealth. But cracks began to appear. Enter BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. China built railways, ports, and highways across Africa, financing over $155 billion in infrastructure projects. Russia signed military and mining agreements, helping Mali and Burkina Faso push back against French control. India invested in African oil and pharmaceutical industries, becoming a top trading partner. South Africa acted as the gateway, helping the continent join BRICS' financial system. Now, with Egypt and Ethiopia officially joining BRICS+, Africa's voice in the bloc is stronger than ever. The key shift? Trade without the dollar. China is buying African oil in yuan. Russia is trading gold for grain with African partners. BRICS is developing a new gold-backed settlement system. This directly undermines the U.S. dollar, the very backbone of Western dominance. African nations are no longer accepting the role of raw material exporters. They are taking back control. Zimbabwe banned raw lithium exports. If Tesla or Samsung wants lithium, they must now process it in Africa, not Europe or Asia. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger are rewriting mining laws to demand higher royalties from companies like Barrick Gold and Orano. Ghana's Gold for Oil program allows the country to pay for fuel with gold instead of US dollars. Tanzania and Zambia signed agreements to build joint processing plants for copper instead of exporting raw ore. South Africa is moving to control platinum exports, vital for green hydrogen production. This shift is massive. Africa is not just exporting rocks anymore. It is building industries. And the West is terrified. Why is this bankrupting the West? Because the entire Western system is built on cheap resources priced in dollars. For decades, oil was sold in US dollars. Gold was settled in dollars. Minerals were traded through London and New York. This gave Washington a free advantage. It could print dollars and buy resources on credit. But now, Niger is refusing to sell uranium to France. Ghana is swapping gold directly for fuel. BRICS is building systems that bypass the dollar entirely. The US dollar is losing its role as the global reserve currency, and without it, America cannot keep financing its debt or its military bases worldwide. The Africa problem has become a U.S. survival crisis. Put it all together and you see the revolution. $5 trillion in resources under African control. BRICS backing Africa with infrastructure, trade, and finance. Raw export bans forcing Western companies to invest locally or leave. A steady collapse of the dollar's monopoly. The West is facing what it fears most, a world where it cannot dictate terms. Winners. African nations like Zimbabwe, Ghana, and Mali gaining real economic independence. BRICS nations securing resources outside U.S. control. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AfCFTA, linking 1.4 billion people into the largest free trade zone in the world. Losers. The IMF and World Bank, losing their leverage. Western mining corporations, seeing their profits cut. The U.S. dollar, as its role in global trade shrinks. For over 400 years, Africa's resources fueled Western empires. But today, the script is flipping. Africa is no longer the victim of exploitation. It is becoming the centerpiece of the new global economy. The $5 trillion revolution is here, and it is bankrupting the West. The question is, will the West adapt to this new reality, or will it fight desperately to hold on to a system that no longer works? Because ready or not, Africa has arrived.